thank you very much. I think with that, the esteemed panel is already now known to you. So you know they're all experts in their fields. I'm not going to take too much time, but just to say that I think this is one of those platforms where we will seek to simplify the entire EB5 process. It may seem like a lot. It may seem very overwhelming if you look through the fine print. But these are the experts and the legal voices who will help you to basically understand how you can better navigate this process, whether this process is for you, what are the timelines, what's at stake. We're going to look to demystify the EB5. So thank you all very much for being with us on this panel. I think let's just begin with the basics. And Girish, since you're sitting right next to me, if I can ask you, what is EB5? How best simply can you describe it to somebody who's still trying to figure out what the best path forward is for them as far as the American dream is concerned?
Like you rightly mentioned in the beginning, that it is very important to demystify this concept. So simply put, EB5 is an investment-based option, one of the options rather, to receive permanent residency in the US. Now, how can that be done? Since I mentioned it's an investment-based visa, means there is an investment amount which is required. So the minimum investment amount which is required for anyone to qualify for EB5 visa is 800,000 US dollars. And those 800,000 worth of US dollars need to be invested in a qualifying investment. So two aspects to it. One is clean source of funds, and second, investment into a qualifying business. So when we talk about an investment-based visa or investment, we quickly think about what are the returns, whether there is a profit which is involved, what are the return on your investment which is involved. But this category of visa, the only return on your investment is the actual green card or the permanent residency for the main applicant, spouse, and unmarried children below 21 years of age. So simply put, that is the premise of your EB5 visa.
All right. I think that explains it very briefly. And I think the point that you raised about ROI is also very important. And we're going to touch upon that in just a bit so that there are no misconceptions or doubts. But I want to quickly cut across to Asif Chhipa. Thanks very much, Asif, for being with us. I wanted to ask you, as somebody who has been there, done that, and we're going to try, like I said, and demystify this for the benefit of our viewers and the people here step by step. How do you know if EB5 is for you?
Well, that depends individually and person to person. So for example, if I'm going to take my example, for me, the EB5 option for mainly because I want my children to just settle there and get the higher education over there. So that was the route that I chose for my own to apply for the EB5. And as Girish rightly said, that it's a systematic process where you need to understand the concept of the immigration as well as your investment. So these are two boats simultaneously you are riding together, need to maintain the balance out of it. And in order to understand deeply, there are like systematic process that you need to follow.
Okay, but how did you take the decision since you've been there, done that? What made you arrive at the decision that the EB5 was perhaps the best route for you? And I'm asking you this again because there are so many people here who are perhaps at the cusp of understanding whether this is for them or not.
Well, as I just mentioned, again, this is depends person to person. For me, I personally wanted my children to just get settled there and get the education right from the beginning, right? So anyhow, for example, most of the parents want the children to go for the bachelor's or master's after finishing the primary education in India. And right after that, the children are supposed to just get settled, and they feel a kind of a competition in the market because on the H-1B status, it used to earlier that they used to get the green card from the H-1B status or the student status, but after 2016, the scenario has changed. And looking by the condition, if ultimately my goal is to send my children for the higher education, why not to start the basic education right from the beginning? The residency and the citizenship is there so that my children will be qualified for lots of other benefits. The international fee structure will not be applied, and they will be under the basic category of the fee structure. And there are lots of other benefits that they will be able to get, which they will not be able to acquire during their international study student kind of a process.
All right. So I think the future of your kids is what sealed the deal for you. And I think a lot of important points that you make there in terms of, ease of just education, fee structures, etc. So that's something that I think is top of mind for a lot of people who perhaps consider this route. Let me shift focus to the panelists on my right. Ishaan, if I can ask you, since I said we're going to go step by step, what's the first step? So if you've decided, like Asif did, that the EB5 route is for you, if I'm not wrong, picking your regional center is step one. How do you go about it? What is a regional center? Can you explain it for us?
Sure. Let's talk about that. And like Asif, I'm an EB5 investor too.
Oh, you're an EB5 investor
yeah,
too.
so, both, that's a great panel, right? Like you've got two actual EB5 investors here.
Two people who've been there, done that.
Yeah,
yes.
we've been there, done that. And, I'm a little different from Asif. He's a little older than I am. He did it for his kids. I don't have any kids. I did it for myself. I knew the opportunities in the US were good for me. So now let's say that you've made up your mind you want to do EB5 and you made that call. So next step would be to do is your research, right? Talk to EB5 regional centers. Regional centers are essentially investment issuers. They issue EB5 investment options that you can pick and choose from. It's a good idea to do a lot of research at this point of time. Look into the different projects, look into the regional centers, Google them, find out what their track record is. Have they ever failed? Have they had project failures? Have they not repaid the investors? Have they been sued by the investors? It's really important to actually see and find out. Everyone can talk about a great track record, but at the end of the day, projects that are really solid, projects that are recession resistant, are a dime a dozen. And it's up to you as an EB5 investor to find those. So let's say you do your research, you pick a solid project, you make your investment. Now the next step is to just wait. You file your petition, you wait about a year, maybe 2 years, you get your approval, and then you're on track to getting your green card. There's two ways to do it. If you're already in the US on a non-immigrant visa, like a F1 or H1B, you'll adjust status. If you're outside the US, you'll do consular processing. I did a consular processing. I went to the consulate here in India, did my visa interview, and then I finally ended up getting my green card in hand. So that's the process in a nutshell. People should budget about 5 to 6 years, potentially 7 years, to go from A to Z, all the way till they get their money back, and then eventually apply for citizenship if they want to.
Okay, so I think you've laid out the time process, and of course, everybody's reasons are different. So we're not going to ask you how old you are, and we're not going to ask Asif how old he is, but I think you've established the fact that this is generational. So it's not something that is specific to a certain age group, which is a very interesting point that you make there. But then, the question that arises to everybody's mind is the legitimacy of the regional center that you're picking. So how do you establish that? And Sandip, if I can pick your brains on that. I think what's really important for people to understand here is the security of their money, the fact that you're picking the right regional center. How much transparency is there? When you're picking your regional center, what are the questions that you should be asking of your regional center, and what are the sort of parameters that, as an investor, you should keep in mind when you pick your center?
Right. So it's like...
Yes,
Hello.
you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, so EB5 is the most important decision of your life, and regional center is the most important entity you choose, right? So as Ishaan rightly said, a lot depends on regional center, how I would go ahead about it. Mm-hmm. First of all, you should go, because it's your money, you are the one who take the decision. So just go and check the track record of regional center. So since how many years they are in the business, is there any negative impact they had in the past for the project related or any regulatory point of view? How many investors they facilitate in the past? For example, let's say if I talk about my regional center, we have done more than 1,500 till now with 100% track record, right? So that the number speaks for themselves. You just go and check the promoter background, how much year they are in the business, right? What their background? Are they from the real estate background? Are they from the legal background? So that all makes sense once you choose a regional center.
Okay.
And what kind of asset class ultimately they are gonna deploy at. So for example, there are a lot of asset class, maybe like say housing real estate, maybe a resort, maybe a hotel. So what kind of asset class basically this regional center is deploying fund to? That also makes sense.
Right. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, just one point to add regarding the projects or regional centers or track records. When it comes to n number of projects that a regional center conducts, there has to be an issue with one or two of them. So there is no reason to be scared about it. I think the most important factor over here is to analyze and ask right questions to the regional center, and also conduct independent due diligence as to what were the steps taken by that particular regional center to sort out those issues or to address those issues, because that is important. So I can say that I have a 100% track record, But if there is no scenario wherein that regional center has gone into any kind of issues in the past, then there is no way for you to analyze as a prospective investor as to if something goes wrong with a particular project, then what is it that that particular regional center is going to do? So there is a pro and con with both of these concepts. So I think it should not be taken into isolation, but each and everything should be analyzed and by having a holistic view about things. That's my 2 cents about it.
Okay, I think that's very interesting to note as well, that not every sort of setback is a red flag. There are bound to be certain red and orange flags. You have to know which ones actually perhaps stick out. Akshat, if I can come to you at this point, I actually did pick Akshat's brain a little before as well to try and understand a lot of these answers myself. And I think one of the most interesting things that you said is you have to ask the right questions. So I'm not going to ask those questions, but for the benefit of viewers who are watching, if I'm going to a regional center, what are my top 5 questions?
Sure. So I'll rephrase that to top 6 questions.
Okay, go ahead. Top 10 is fine also.
And let's divide that into 2 categories. Number 1 is the security of capital. So when you're going to a regional center, ask them 3 questions. Ask them, how long have they been in this business? Ask them, are they working the project that you're investing in? Have they worked with that developer in the past? Has that developer done EB5 in the past or not? And then obviously the third question you need to ask is about the capital stack. So are there big financial companies backing the project? Are you raising funds in a preferred equity space? Are you raising funds in a mezzanine debt space? Are you raising funds in a senior lender position? So these are 3 very critical questions that will give you an understanding of how secure your capital is. Now coming to the other aspect, which is you getting your permanent green card at the end of the day. Again, ask 3 questions to the regional center. Ask them, how many EB5 investors do you have in this project? Ask them, what are the total number of jobs that your project is going to be creating? And finally ask them, when you're meeting us today, are there any jobs that you've already created in this particular project? So I believe once you speak and you ask these 6 critical questions, you will get a very fair understanding of how safe your investment is.
Okay, so you have a representative of a regional center asking you what you need to ask them. I think it doesn't get clearer than that. But Abhishek Singh, if I can come to you, because the other big question, of course, that everybody is concerned about is ROI. Given the fact that the ROI is very low typically when it comes to the EB5, why should people invest in EB5? What do you want to explain to people as far as ROI is concerned? What should their expectation be?
Thank you very much for asking this. I've got this question so many times since morning, and I get that all the time. And many people have said that I'm kind of blunt on that. So I say this to all the investors whom I meet for the first time or in my initial meetings with them, that EB5 investment is not an investment that you make for making money. If that's what your primary objective is, don't do it. I can be as blunt as that. Now, EB5 investment is solely done for your immigration purpose, solely done for a green card. If you have importance of green card in your life, if you're planning your future, your kids' future, you're looking at a long-term residence in the US, you're looking to move to US, you want your kids to study over there, and then have a future over there, you want, as a family of whole, you want to be in the US, then go for a green card. So basically, EB5 investment is to obtain your immigration benefits, not to obtain any kind of financial benefits. On an average, it ranges from project to project, but you can look into returns of somewhere around 0.25% to 1.5, 2% the max per annum. That also is subjective to the project. But yeah, that's what my answer would be.
All right, that's very interesting. I think that clarifies it to a large extent, that if you're looking for your gain or for your investment to double or triple, then EB5 is definitely not the route for you. It's important to have that clarity.
Absolutely not. See, when you're looking for an EB5 investment, there are 2 things that you should keep in mind. Number 1, smooth processing of your green card. Number 2, how much safe your capital can be. See, understand one thing, as per the law, your money has to be at risk. Now, it is the role, or it is the duty of the regional center to mitigate that as much as possible. But still, technically, it has to be at risk, but that doesn't mean that you need to get into a risky investment. So try and see the structuring of the deal, which can keep your capital safe, and a smooth processing of a green card can take place.
You know, before we get into the legality of it, and Aarushi here is the legal expert, so she's going to explain how the legality of this works. Ishaan, if I could just very briefly ask you, since you've been there, done that, and you explained that to us, what's the average time that the funds have to stay invested for? Can you expect to have your entire investment back, and if so, in how much time?
Sure. So in the eyes of the US government, you have to keep your money invested for a minimum of 2 years. 2 years starts from the day that your last dollar leaves your bank account, leaves the escrow account, and goes into the project. 2 years from then. But the actual return of your capital totally depends on the project. And this is where you as an investor really need to do your homework. It's not, I would say it's not just the structure of the project and all that, but it's also the people, the company that you're investing with. Do they know what they're doing? Have they returned money before in the past? You know, if the company that you're looking to invest with has been, I don't know, charged by the SEC or has lost hundreds of investors' money, like, is that really the kind of people that you want to put your hard-earned money with? At the end of the day, just because the government says 2 years does not mean you'll get your money back in 2 years. It's likely could be 3 years, 4 years, or even longer than that if the project isn't successful. So that due diligence, what we call, is an extremely important part of this entire journey. And that can really impact when you might get when and if you might get your money back.
Okay. So 2 years is a minimum period. You wanted to add something?
Absolutely, what he said is absolutely correct. Just so you guys know, with the new sustainment period in picture, instead of asking when will I get my money back, look into the fact that how will you get your money back? The exit strategy of every project. That's actually one of the things that you should look, when you are considering a regional center, you should look into how they have planned the exit for their investors. So exit strategy becomes very important. Try and learn, try and come to know, try and establish how are you going to get your money back. That will automatically answer your question, when will you get your money back?
Okay, so I think, again, just to break it down in terms of the questions that you should be asking, it's more about how you're going to get your money back and not necessarily when you're going to get your money back. And the if, of course, is something that hangs in balance, and we will answer more questions on that. But you've been listening so patiently, Aarushi, and I want to just understand from you, there is a whole dimension of legality that is involved as far as this process is concerned. Indeed. At the very outset, what would you like to tell viewers, the people who are here, what's the first legal step?
Mm-hmm. So firstly, this is a policy of my firm, and we truly believe in it, that if we empower you as an investor, then you will ask the right questions, you will be guided in the right manner, and you will come to the right conclusion. So when you talk about legality, essentially what you're looking at is you're looking at doing your due diligence, as esteemed panelists mentioned, on the project, on the regional center, finding out about their track record and what have you. And then on the legal side, you have to take into account the laws of two countries. Number one, United States, because you're applying for a US immigration program. So you have to take into account the regulatory rules laid down by USCIS, US Citizenship and Immigration Services. There are policy manual guidelines which are regularly updated. You have to keep a watch for it. And your law firm has to be skilled in guiding you to the right manner in order to navigate the entire program start to finish. So you're looking at putting up certain petitions with the government. You're looking at answering the questions posed by the government. And you're looking at ensuring that whatever capital you must invest is lawfully earned and legally traceable. So that is actually the Bible of the entire program. You have to show to the government that the funds that you are sourcing come from qualified sources. Your lawyers have to map out the path of funds. They have to explain to the government in a very simple manner that, look, here we have an investor. These are the different sources of income for the investor. And as per your laid down regulations, here's how we would like to present the petition. So you're looking at the US immigration laws. Then if you are on an H-1B visa, you're on an F visa, which is a student visa, or you are on an L visa, which is an entrepreneur visa, you have to ensure that your immigration pathway to EB5 runs absolutely perfectly in unison with your particular your current visa status, whether it is H visa or it is L visa or it is F visa. On the other side, since you are sourcing the funds from India, if you are sourcing the funds from India, you also have to factor in the regulations which are applicable here. So you're looking at Reserve Bank of India laws. So there's a limit on how much money a particular resident Indian can transfer in a fiscal year, which is $250,000 US. You're looking at Indian income tax laws. Who can provide you a gift How can you use the money which is provided you as a loan? You're looking at the FEMA regulations, Foreign Exchange Management Act regulations. So there are a plethora of laws involved, and this is where we as a law firm who has expertise to deal in the regulations both of United States and India, we stand with you and we help you interpret all these laws.
It's interesting that you lay out what the requisition is from a legal standpoint. I think the next obvious question that would be on anybody's mind is what is the protection, if at all, guaranteed in the law that you're not, that you have some kind of legal sanctity and security associated with what you're doing.
Sure. So Abhishek rightly mentioned, you have to factor in when are you getting your money paid back, what are the terms of the particular investment. When you sign a contract, these are all contracts bound by the contractual law, securities law. So you have to understand that you are signing up for certain terms and conditions, go through it, ask the right questions to the regional center folks, to the securities lawyer, to your broker dealer, to your immigration lawyers, and try and understand what is the tenure of investment. Now, by law, this investment has to be at risk. So there's no guaranteed return of investment. Anybody who says that, don't worry, we'll return your money back, 100% guarantee, is lying on your face, right? At the same time, it does not have to mean that this is a risky investment, because like all these regional centers here, they basically specialize in mitigating the risk by managing your investment. They are fund managers at the end of the day, correct? So you look at the contract, read the contract. The contract has regulations to spell out when you can be paid back, how long the minimum investment must be. And then there are always sanctions and legalities associated if the regional center does not follow its duties well. So these are a whole lot of protections, I believe. In fact, the new Reform and Integrity Act, which has been enacted in 2022, was with the intent and purpose to empower the investors.
Right. In fact, this 2022 law that you're talking about, this really altered the landscape as far as EB5 is concerned. The EB5 has been around for several years.
Yes.
So what's really changed in the last 2 years from a legal standpoint? And then we'll take on further
Sure.
questions.
So I think we can talk about it the entire day as to what changes we are seeing. This is a altogether new act that we are dealing with. And the beauty of the act is that we have a faster adjudication now.
Okay.
Thanks to the government agencies who've taken a note of the fact that we had investors waiting for years who did not see an outcome on their petition. And it was becoming really uncomfortable because your entire planning depends upon the outcome, right? So the programs become faster in the sense that now you have a minimum processing timing on rural projects, let's say about 8 months to a year. On a high employment area projects, we are seeing about 1.5 years to 2 years. There are business plan approvals on the respective project where you're investing that must be approved prior to the government giving you an I-526C or a principal petition approval. Then I would also like to state, and this is very important for candidates who are physically in the United States, you have now the ability to apply for concurrent or parallel adjustment of status. So Ishaan briefly mentioned, if you are on an H-1B visa, and let's say you are at the risk of layoff, which is unfortunately the truth of the scenario as of today, you can parallelly apply for a concurrent AOS, which is requesting the government that while my EB5 petition is getting adjudicated, kindly give me the benefit of a work permit and a travel permit. So what's happening right now, and this is literally the start of the act, is that within the first 3 to 4 months of making the petition, while the government is adjudicating your petition, you're receiving what is known as a combination card, many of the times, or at least a work and a travel permit. And with that, it's an open work permit. So let's say that if you would like to start your business, if you would like to work with multiple employers, if unfortunately you are laid off on H-1B, or for example, you're not finding a job on F-1 OPT, you can immediately segue to this work permit. And not only you, your spouse also obtains a work permit. And you can travel freely without the stress of getting your visa renewed again.
Right. So this is for those whose application processes are underway. So while your EB5 is underway, this is like a...
Yes.
This is an added benefit. So
Absolutely.
That's really interesting to know.
I would like to add one point as to the major change which has happened since the passage of Reforms and Integrity Act of 2022. So what happened prior was, since the law lapsed, there were a lot of applications which were in queue, and USCIS would not touch those applications because the law was not in place. So the new law has brought in the concept of grandfathering. What it means is, since the law is there until 2027, for all the applications which are applied for prior to 30th September of 2026, all those applications, let's say tomorrow US government decides that let's scrap EB5 program, we don't want this program anymore. However, whoever applies prior to this particular date, 30th September 2026, those applications will have to be adjudicated no matter what. So that's one additional benefit or comfort that the investors would have.
It's an additional safety net that no matter what
Correct.
happens with the rule, your process still goes through. There are also a lot of questions around what region, and there are so many regional center representatives here. So I'm going to ask this open-ended question to whoever wants to take it on. What are regional centers doing? What is the role that regional centers are playing in order to make sure that investments are safe? What's your part in order to make sure that happens? And I think both of you want to take that on, so you go first.
So all regional centers would sort of want to take activities where they partner with developers. And again, let's understand, a developer is just a partner to the regional center. So you as investors are our clients. Your green card and your repayment of capital is what we represent. A developer is just a partner. So coming back to your question, taking initiatives where you're ensuring that you're partnering with developers that are known, have a good track record is a step. Ensuring that you're getting your investors invested in an asset class which is close to recession free. So, these could be asset classes in the form of a multifamily, these could be a hotel. It all depends on how well is the security structured. Again, doing your due diligence as a regional center, maintaining your track record, ensuring that you give a good service to the investors are all a couple of steps that you can take to give your investors the best experience.
All right, you also wanted to take
Sure. So I'd say that yes, regional centers definitely have a role to play when it comes to structuring really good, sound projects. I think it's up to the investment issuer, the fund manager. It's their role to ensure that a project is structured in a way that can withstand a COVID 2.0, a recession or something like that. But beyond that, just beyond the investment issuer, I'd also like to highlight the fact that you're investing in the United States. The US has a very strict form of justice and a strict form of law. And at the end of the day, it's not just the regional centers which will hopefully look out for your interests, but there are other government bodies which are keeping them accountable. So for example, the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, that is the equivalent of SEBI in India, and they have stepped in and gone after regional centers when they've done the wrong thing. So keep in mind, it's not just the regional center, but you do have government bodies. You have the US justice system behind you that will look out for you if your regional center engages in things like fraud. And it has happened. There has been a track record and a history of the US government going after investment issuers when they've done something wrong.
Okay, I want to just shift gears because I think this explains the role of the regional center, what they're doing, and the fact that they're being held accountable by somebody other than just you. I think all of that just establishes the security, safety, and legitimacy of the investment. But I just want to understand, how is the EB5 landscape now playing out? And like I said, who better than this panel to answer some of those questions? So if I can begin maybe, Asif, by asking you, how has the entire EB5 landscape changed over the years, and how are job losses, especially H-1B visa holders who are insecure about their job or have lost jobs, have they crowded that market? And therefore, does it make it harder for somebody sitting here who wants to go the EB5 route?
Well, honestly speaking, I believe it's equally easier for both if a petitioner is filing from India or a petitioner is already there in US. So the only difference that the advantage of the petitioner filing from the US soil, that he will be able to apply for the change of status, and he will stay, he will stay in US and continue the EAD, that is work permit, as well as the traveling document. While in case of India, you need to go through the NVC as well as the consulate process. That means there might be a possibility that the consulate process may take a little longer time compared to the change of status, depending on the visa availability. So that is the only one factor that defines the consulate process can be a little longer compared to the change of status, because the ultimate goal is to enter into the United States. Now, with the new form of the reform of integrity and RIA. So over here, we are looking at the H-1B as well as student who are already there. They are able to file the petition right from US soil and apply for the change of status. The other factors, so there are, as far as the new forms are concerned, I would say there are so many things that we need to understand that. So I would, yeah.
Asif, wouldn't you agree
to
that majority of the people who are doing EB5 now more than ever are especially people who are already in the US? Like, I don't know about you, but I talk to so many of my peers, like students and others who are already there. They're basically Americanized. They want to live there permanently. They just don't have an option to do so.
So
Absolutely,
if I mean, for those of you who have a good grip on the landscape, the question very simply was, is it more advantageous to somebody living in the US to go via this route as opposed to somebody living here in Hyderabad or anywhere in India who wants to walk down that road?
So, the way I take it, Rishika, is like
Sandip and then you.
there is no other way for H-1B holder or F-1 holder to receive a green card in the United States. So I'll just give you a number.
So you're saying
The
EB5 is the only
EB5
option
is the
available?
only option. So I'll just give you a data. If someone is on H-1B, and if they want to convert their H-1 to green card, for India-based investor, the current timeline is 190 years. 94? Okay, so I forgot that 4 years.
Okay.
So if you're on H-1, to get your H-1B to US permanent residence, you have to wait 190 years.
Okay.
So there is no other
pretty
option.
much guarantee nobody can live to see that day then.
Yes.
So you're saying it's impossible?
It's impossible.
Basically.
You have to go through only EB5 road.
Okay.
And sooner is better. So the best day to start your EB5 journey is today. The next best day is tomorrow, and the next best day is the day after.
Well, that's a good headline bite right there for those
So,
who are aspiring.
if I may, I
Yes.
just wanted to add this, especially for the candidates who are applying from outside United States. Yes, majority of the investors right now are the ones who are in the US. But a key takeaway in the new Reform and Integrity Act for the outland applicants is that, let's say you're applying from India, right? We all know that the process applying from outside United States takes a little longer. But how long, right? So as part of the firm, what we were seeing as a practice is, let's say you put up the petition today, the average processing time on the principal petition, which is I-5 to 6C, is similar. You apply within the US, you apply outside the US, does not matter. Post securing the approval, then you have to have your case get transferred to the National Visa Case Center, as Asif rightly mentioned. Now, under the old act, we had instances where it took about 6 months, 8 months, and a year. And that's totally determinant on the basis of the appointments available at the consulate, right? Thankfully, under the new act, this is what we are witnessing, that we have the appointments coming up in average about 4 to 6 months. The NVC case transfer is taking roughly around 3 months in the current act. And subsequent to that, the consulates are taking additionally maybe another 2 months or 3 months and coming up with an appointment date. Also, there's a marked improvement. We are seeing at the US consulates in Hong Kong, Singapore, even Mumbai, they are now pre-screening all your biographic documents. So they are sending you a routine email saying, okay, your police certificate looks good, your birth certificate looks good. These are all basic mechanisms to ensure that when you're appearing for the appointment, all you have to do is focus on talking about your intent, talking about the project, and then you're stamped. So I believe, this is what I can say as my firm's experience, that the consulates worldwide are taking steps to adjudicate and prioritize employment-based petitions. And I would like to just mention that clients should not confuse this category with the normal visitor visa, for example, which takes forever.
Okay, so I think, like I said, that also demystifies a lot of what you said. But you wanted to come in on the H-1B point?
Yes, and more or less on the entire RIA, Reforms and Integrity Act. Aarushi summed it pretty well. So there are two sets of people we are talking about over here. One set of people who are in the US, legally residing, and one set of people who are outside the US. Now, people who are outside the US, we need to bring up this point it's very important for us to talk about it. Now, with Reforms and Integrity Act, they have opened up new categories, which one of them is rural TEA. TEA stands for Targeted Employment Area, which makes your investment $800,000 US. With rural TEA comes priority processing. That's what is very, very important for you to understand. Like if you are from outside the US, and even if, for example, you don't have a B1, B2 visa and you don't plan to take a B1, B2 visa, but you want to enter the US with a PR, with a conditional green card. So this priority processing gives you the, like faster, this gives you speed. Your I-526E petition, your initial and primary petition, which gets you to consular processing, which gets you to your conditional green card. With priority processing, your I-526E petition is approved faster than the rest. So that means you cross stage 1 pretty quickly and earlier than the rest of the petitions, and that's how you end up getting your conditional green card faster. So
Okay, I know you wanted to come in, but I'm going to ask you a very specific question. When it comes to an applicant from India, the average time that they're looking at is 5 to 6 years?
So
when it comes to an H-1B applicant who's already in the US, what is the average time that they're looking at?
Right. So that is exactly the point which I was trying to make, that someone who is already in the US, probably on H-1B or any other non-immigrant visa category, let's say student visa, of course there is an advantage for them to concurrently file for the adjustment of status, which will allow them or save that time which someone outside of the US has to spend through the consular processing. However, does that mean that someone who is outside of the US EB5 program is not for them? Then the answer is no. That's not what we mean when we say that there is an advantage to someone who is already in the US. So someone who is in India, I think the timelines which we are looking at is additional 6 to 8 months, because the file, as Aarushi mentioned, will move from USCIS to NVC, and from NVC, it will come down to the consulate. And we are seeing updated timelines when it comes to the lower timelines when it comes to consular processing, that the processing timeline for all the visa categories, including EB5 visas, have considerably gone down, post-COVID especially. We were seeing a lot of delay during the COVID times, but right now we are seeing a lot of streamlining as far as all the visa categories are concerned, including EB5. So that's point one. Second point, if someone is in India, like Asif mentioned, what was his motivation to do EB5? His motivation to do EB5 was for his children. So it's not just about timeline. It's not a race that who reaches faster. I'm able to reach in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Maybe I don't want to be in the US for a considerable amount of time. But this visa category, as far as EB5 is concerned, is available at least until 2027. Now we will need to see whether this particular program is renewed or not. And if it is renewed, what investment amount will this be renewed at? So these are a couple of things which you have to bear in mind while you're looking to invest.
But I think I just want to, and I know Aarushi wants to come in here, but I think Aarushi already clarified that point, that irrespective of what changes down the line, if you're applying today, then today's rules and regulations will apply to you retrospectively, even if the law has changed.
Correct.
So I think that's important to note as well.
And that is the reason that you should be looking at your own goal,
Yes.
rather than looking at someone who's in the US.
But the timelines, even though they have been expedited, Aarushi, correct me if I'm wrong, still stand at 5 to 6 years. Is that correct? Just for the benefit of viewers, so if somebody is applying today, they need to know how much into the future they need to plan, or if somebody feels like, I'm going to think about this in 5 years, then they need to know that it's perhaps a decade before they get the green card in their hand.
Right, so you were asking a very valid question, Rishika. The timeline to make the first inroads into United States, which is to get that very first conditional green card, is roughly around 1.5 to 2 years across board. 5 to 6 years is the timeline while you're staying there, you're traveling to get the permanent green card. So your benefits start accruing the moment you're a conditional resident. Also bringing the spotlight back on value proposition, like Girish said. Yes, we are doing this because we have an intention or a motives to stay in the US, but we are interacting with so many parents who have a family of 4 or a family of 3, and they know that in 3 to 4 years from today, my child will be electing a US school. So I want to save on the tuition fees. Now, if I'm paying roughly around $400,000 over a span of 4 years in tuition fees, as opposed to that, let me procure a green card for $800,000, which takes into account the future expenses, so I don't have to spend in tuition. Also, once my child graduates, they don't have to stress about securing a job. So I think A, processing is faster. B, there's also value proposition for people who apply from India, for example.
Ishaan, if I can ask you this question, just again, for the benefit of people to understand this, Aarushi spoke about a provisional green card. That's what you get first, and then subject to XX, you then get your final green card, the time between that could also range north of 2 years.
Yeah,
Yes?
it takes a long time.
So what happens between getting the provisional green card to getting your final green card? And is there a 100% strike rate when it comes to that?
It's not a 100% strike rate, it's definitely high, because if there are denials, they usually happen in the initial stages. So I'll kind of explain. So when you do EB5, you'll file your first petition, right? You'll prepare the source of funds, hopefully with someone like Aarushi, and then you'll file your petition where you basically state where you've invested. When you talk about the project, you're basically explaining to the US government how your money is going to be spent in the project. Now, at the next stage, now once you've got your conditional green card in hand and you're filing for your permanent green card, the government will now look back and see, hey, did you uphold the promises you promised us in your initial petition? Did you keep your money invested for that minimum 2 years and not pull out? And number two, was your money spent correctly to create the jobs? Now, as long as those two things are a yes, you should get your permanent green card approved. So, and usually that approval rate is above north of 90%. Most of the denials happen in the initial stage, when you're doing your source of funds, when you're submitting the business plan for your project. That's where I see more of the denials happening. So if people need to be concerned, they need to be concerned at the initial research stages to make sure that initial petition is good. Generally speaking, even if a project fails and does not return you your money, you can still get your green card as long as your money was spent correctly. As long as nobody defrauded you and took your money and bought a yacht with it, you should be fine.
Okay.
I'd like to add one more important point over here, because, and this is just a technical point so the viewers can understand. So once you have the first green card, that is your conditional green card, which is valid for 2 years, now before the conditional green card expires, there is a window of, it opens 3 months right before the expiry. Over there, the attorney comes into the picture and apply for the removal of condition. That is the particular petition, which is called removal of condition. Now, this removal of condition can also take 12 to 15 months, depending on the situation. From the USCIS can take 12 to 15 months for the approval. Now, that doesn't mean your conditional status is going to expire, because right before 3 months, it was about to expire, right? So what happens, once you apply for the 829, you get the receipt from the USCIS, and the receipt says that we have received your petition, and your conditional status is extended for 48 months. That used to be, earlier it was 24 months, then it has gone up to 48 months. That means even if this, your removal of condition is under process, you are still a resident of this country, and you can still avail all the benefits. You can travel in and out of the country without any particular problem. So this is important to understand, because it may take 12 to 15 months further for your removal of condition to be processed.
Okay, towards the final leg of the discussion, I just want to steer the conversation to understand what the global landscape right now is. So would one of you, Akshat, you and I were talking about this earlier, what is the global scenario as far as EB5 is concerned? We're given to understand that China has the highest number of applicants, followed by India. So it is a very, very popular, very sought after process as far as India is concerned, isn't it?
That's right. So obviously we've all known that the EB5 visa program has been there since 1990, right? So it's not a new program. Governments after governments have sort of backed the program, because obviously it brings in a lot of money, it creates a lot of jobs in the US economy. In terms of global landscape, we've primarily seen 3 countries such as China, India, and Vietnam having the maximum amount of demand for this visa program. Another thing that I've personally seen, and I just sort of break it down in numbers, is, let's say if I as a regional center representative have 10 investors who I have onboarded, the current trends show that about 4 of them are probably in their late 40s, where they are on an H1B, they don't need any visa, they don't need any dependency of money from their family members back in India, so they're completely dependent on themselves, they have the authority to take the call. The next 4 would probably be early H1Bs or, late F1 people who are, just graduating out of college. Early H1Bs, probably the first jobs where they're still dependent on their parents to wire the funds to them in the US. So in those cases, while the end consumer is in the US, the decision maker at the end of the day becomes the parents, which is probably a couple of few people who are sitting here. And that's essentially the reason why we keep coming to cities one after the other, and we keep talking about the EB5 visa program. And the last is obviously the 20% of the people who are primarily just looking at it from an India perspective to completely migrate to the US for a better future. So while yes, we've been talking a lot about the H1Bs and the F1s today in the panel, there are a considerable number of people in India as well who are either looking at it for themselves or their family members and are going to take the final call to make the project investment.
Right. I also want to ask, I think one of the things that we haven't touched too much upon is students. So what is Girish, if I can ask you this question, how does the EB5 landscape work for students? What's the strategy going forward as far as students are concerned?
Sure. So generally what happens with students is they are on their student visa, and depending on what kind of course they have taken, it will either be a 1-year OPT, which is a training period where they can get themselves employed within that domain which they are studying in, or 3 years. Now, if they are unable to get or land up a job, let's say through H-1B, within that time period, they will either have to continue studying or they will have to move out of the US. So in order for them to secure themselves or their status in the US, EB5 becomes one of the options, or rather the only option, because if they have the wherewithal to probably get funds from their parents as a gift, it is a valid source of funds which they can utilize to show that this is the investment which I'm doing through EB5 that will help them secure their residency, or rather their status in the US. So what happens is they apply for EB5 and the concurrent filing of adjustment of status, which will help them apply for something called as EAD, Employment Authorization Document, and a travel permit. So that, and Aarushi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the usual timeline for them to receive the EAD and the travel permit, both, is around 3 to 9 months. It can be more or less. And once they receive that, even while they are waiting for their green card to be received or their initial approval to be received, they still have the flexibility or essentially all the benefits that a usual green card holder will have. So that is one of the
very interesting, because this question really gains a lot of prominence, Aarushi, given the fact that if you look at the landscape in terms of students going abroad to study, India sends the highest number of students to America. That's historically been the trend, and it has continued to remain the trend even post-COVID. So what do Indian students need to know, or what do parents who are sending their kids abroad need to know about EB5? Does your kid have to have graduated in order to be eligible for application? Or while you're thinking about sending your child to study there, you could also parallelly think about EB5 for them?
Correct. So there are multiple strategies that you can work around. We consult with a lot of families who are thinking about applying for EB5 while you're planning a student visa application. So you could time it in a manner that you just enter the US, and subsequent to that, when you have a formidable intention to be staying back in the country, we can apply for the EB5 petition. Advantage, again, everybody is discussed. While you are studying, you will be able to procure your conditional green cards or your permits, and you do not have to rely on the optional practical training period, which comes with a lot of restrictions. So you can plan it after you enter the US. You could plan it even prior to that. So for example, if you know that in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to be filing up the petitions, I'm going to be appearing for the I-20s. So as a family, you can take a decision to apply for the EB5 today. And let's say in the next 2 years, 1.5 years, when you have the conditional green card, you will have the massive advantage. And the advantage is that you will not pay international tuition fees. So you could very well...
Even on a provisional green card?
Yes, it could be. Now, state universities and private universities, this is a completely different topic of conversation. Depending upon state university regulations, you may have to establish residency for a year before you're able to claim that benefit. So long story cut short, there's a lot of benefit, A, in terms of saving on tuition fees, and B, in terms of procuring jobs, and then of course planning your entire future without the dependency on other visa programs.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just add to that, having done EB5 on a student visa, for any parent that is considering EB5, what they should really do is look at the cost of this. The real fundamental cost of EB5 is the opportunity cost of having your money invested elsewhere. I mean, there are FDs in India which pay a higher yield than EB5 investments do. So if you're a parent thinking about doing this for your child, it's really going to be up to you to make that decision. Is my child going to benefit from having permanent residency in the US? I remember when I was on my F1 student visa, running around trying to get a job at a DoD, at a Department of Defense contractor, and it's tough. It's not easy because they want citizens or green card holders who can get security clearance. Even if you have the resume for it, if you're a foreign national, it's not easy. So if you're a parent and you're thinking about it, talk to your child and see if it's really worth it for them. Do they want to reside in the US, at least for the next 10 years? Do they see their career having a massive benefit or growing well with that green card benefit? In that case, EB5 becomes worth it. If the ultimate goal is to come home and run the family business, I would normally tell people not to do EB5.
Very well said, everyone. Just to add one more point, the EAD that you get with EB5 unlocks freedom for F1 students. Why? Because then you not necessarily need to work in a stream related to your major. You can do whatever you want. So that's one very big opportunity and freedom to all the people who are doing F1.
Absolutely right, Abhishek. Just one point. Once you're on F1 visa, if you want to convert your F1 visa into H1B, you have to go through a process of lottery. So there are only 85,000 slots available, and the application is somewhere around 700,000. So to secure H1B, which is a work status, from your student status, again, you have to fight to get selected in that lottery system, and then you're eligible to get your work permit. So first is you have to be in that 10% scenario first, and then again into a green card.
So the odds are hugely stacked against you. Essentially, that's what you're trying to say. Just as closing comments, I also want to understand from all of you, there was this exponential rise in EB5. Data suggests that EB5 for Indian investors rose around 400% between the years of 2016 and 2019. Now, that's huge. But what we've seen just in 2024, if you look at what's happened in the last 8 months, there's been around a 22% dip. So there's been a sudden dip while the overall EB5 is continuing to rise. There's been this sudden dip. Do any of you worry about this sudden dip? Any of you want to take on, why you think this sudden dip has happened?
I'd say it's pretty simple because the amount went up, right? I mean, when I did EB5, it was $500,000. It was also 60 rupees to the dollar right now. And I know this is on NDTV profit, so maybe you guys can do a little, currency analysis and see how that impacted the markets. But also along with that, you have to realize is with the investment amount almost doubling up, with fees going up as well, it is significantly harder for a family to do EB5 now than it was before. And also, not to mention, look, as traditionally speaking, South Asians, we're followers, not leaders. When you see your friend doing EB5 and he gets his green card, then you follow your other friend. I think a lot of that 2016 pattern onwards was a lot of people seeing, hey, my friend's done it, he's gotten his green card, now he's almost got his money back, maybe I should do it as well. I think that dip that happened the last few years was also people realizing that maybe I missed out on my opportunity, and the price has gone up as well. So different factors. And along with that, I also say the rest of the world, golden visa programs in other countries like Greece and rest of Europe have also become, quite popular. So all those factors considered, maybe, with elections coming around, the Trump administration and whatnot, a lot of people have started considering Europe and the UK as an option. And that's completely fair. I think everyone should look at all the options available to them, figure out the country they want to move to the most, and go from there.
Well, I think if you look at the political landscape in America or you compare it to Europe, it's equally complex. So I don't know if those are really factors that people are considering, but if you are considering one of those factors, I think all your jobs have become a lot harder, haven't they? With this dip coming in, I suppose you all have tougher tasks ahead of you.
Yeah, obviously, but I would not say that the number is going drastically. Yes, of course, it has got the impact. And one more impact I probably would add, that there is a recent announcement of the increase in the TCS, where you are supposed to pay 20% tax if you want to move the amount out of the India. For me personally, like the amount going from $500 to $800,000, it took some time for the investor to digest that fact. But this sudden impact of that TCS, I would again say this again would take some time to digest this particular fact. But overall, I am a firm believer of this program. The simple reason because I have gone through this program. Not only that, I have achieved my immigration dream for my children. So I'm a firm believer of this program, and I would still believe, no matter how many other golden programs are there in the market, US will remain the most popular destination for the families and for the individual students who want to pursue their career.
Okay. We don't have representatives from any other visa programs here to fight that for a golden visa in Europe,
Thank
for
God.
instance. So all the voices here are from America or for the American visa program. So you're going to have to just stomach that. Yeah, any of you wanted to come? You wanted to come.
So I think one of the reasons for the dip is EB5 always has been cyclical. So it can be on a quarterly basis, it can be on a financial year basis. So you will see a rise in the applications during March and April because the financial year ends and the new financial year starts there. So it has always been cyclical. Another factor is, especially during 2019 November, since the amount was supposed to go up from 500,000 to 900,000, there were a lot of applications.
Yep.
So if you set that benchmark, 2019 as the benchmark, you will always see that that is one of the exceptions within the industry. And also one thing which we have observed since we have been in this industry since a very long time is we take a lot of time to do our due diligence.
Correct.
So for any average Indian investor, the usual time to conduct that due diligence is around 3 to 6 months. With other countries, it's 1 week. So
Correct.
that's the
Right.
difference that we see. I think that is one of the reasons.
Like I said, you don't have any of the other country reps here, so I'm not going to get
Yeah,
into
I
that.
just-
But sorry, I just wanted to ask one very specific question regarding what you said. I think it's also important for people to note that the current investment that is required may not always stay this amount as we've historically seen. So there's been a huge spike as far as the investment amount is concerned. And there is nothing to say that it's not going to happen again. So if you're potentially looking at the program, I think the point that all the other panelists have also made is that now would perhaps be a good time rather than a couple of years later. You wanted to come in.
Yeah, just quickly 2 points on the reason for the dip. One is that the program was reenacted in 2022 March, but it's only until August that we saw the first batch of petitions go out. So regional centers have also taken time to adhere to the compliance. Even investors were very uncomfortable with the changes. So then the entire industry actually has adapted since 2023. And the other part is there's a concept of staggered investment. So there's obviously certain regional centers who offer loan, very lucrative. This is to adjust to the increase of the investment amount. Secondly, in addition to this, the government says that you don't have to invest all the money, $800,000 on day go. You could be in the process of investing. So while staggered investment or deferred investment has always been allowed in law, it's just being more vividly followed now. So between 2022 and 2024, now we see more people trying to start with an investment of, let's say, about a couple of $100,000. And then the regional centers are giving them tenure of 3 or 4 months to top up the sum.
Okay.
Yeah, Rishika, I just wanted to add, as Aarushi said, and I was just coming to that while it's not a challenge, it's an opportunity for regional centers to also reinvent them and think and push their boundaries. And that's exactly what Aarushi said. So there are a few regional centers that do offer a loan program, right, where we're offering loans of up to $300,000 to our investors. So for anyone, let's say, who's still at a $500,000 value, who still wants to do EB5, you can reach out, you can explore these options, you can look at a loan program and still fund your EB5 application while you have access to only a $500,000.
All right.
I think it's covered.
It's covered. That's what you want.
I'll actually disagree with all my panelists here and say that you should not rush your decision. EB5 is likely going to be the biggest decision that any family makes. Even if you're an ultra high net worth individual, you're going to think twice before you make an investment like this. I think you should do it when you're comfortable. Okay, so the investment amount will go up in 2027. You know, there's plenty of time between now and 2027. But imagine even if we reach 2028 and the amount has increased and kept up with inflation, you know, so be it. The fact is, America will always remain attractive. If you and your family need time to put your money and your funds together to make your investment, go for it.
Okay.
I think like this is a decision worth taking your time on, to do your homework on. Do not get rushed by anyone. Even if someone tells you, oh my God, we have this fantastic project, you got to invest now. Take a breath, see if it's worthwhile, and then go for it.
I think words to live by. Those really are words to live by, yes.
One small point. What Ishaan said makes a lot of sense, but I started my career way back in 2014, and over this period of time, you know, what I've seen, there are two set of people. One, who are in the process or in the research phase, where they're considering whether I should go for EB5 or not. Is it beneficial for me or my family? And then there's second set of people who have made up their mind to go for EB5. Yes, obviously, $800,000 is a huge sum of money, hard-earned money. You would like to keep it safe. You will like to analyze your options. Everything is obviously correct. But if you have made up your mind that you are going to go for EB5 and it is something that you are really looking at, right now is the best time to go for it.
Okay.
Because after a very long time, we have a program which is valid for 5 years. And we have current categories open for Indians. Yep.
Okay, so I think I'm going to just quickly sum this up because what panelists here, these are the stakeholders, the people who actually know what you need to do in order to help you to make the decision. I think the final decision, like Ishaan very rightly said, has to be yours. The timeline has to be yours. You have to have solid reasons for doing what you want to do. And if you do decide that EB5 is the route for you, then, well, you've met the panelists here. You've heard from the experts. We sincerely hope this conversation's been useful or perhaps a starting point for you if you're thinking about walking down that road. So thank you all very much for your time. Thank you all for listening. If anybody has any questions, this would be a good time. Okay, so lots of hands coming up.
Just 1 second.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I have 2 questions for Aarushi. If a person in the US on a student visa is applying for the EB5 program,
Right.
will they be landlocked till their case gets adjudicated, and what is going to happen at that particular point of time? And the second one is, in the EB5 program, when is it exactly you can apply for the citizenship? Is it counted from the day of your provisional green card, what you get, or is it from the time your restrictions have been removed?
So your second question is, when are you eligible for citizenship?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So firstly, I'll answer the second question. You are eligible to apply for citizenship when you complete 5 years of tenure, and this is counted from the date you become a conditional resident, not a permanent. So A, you need to show 5 years of residency counted from the date you became a conditional resident, and B, in the last 2.5 years of that leg, you should be more or less satisfying the physical presence test in United States. Then you become eligible. Now coming to your first question for the student visa holders. Are they landlocked? Answer is no. However, as a student visa holder, you have the optionality A of just filing your I-526E petition and waiting for the approval. Subsequent to that, you apply for adjustment of status, which is a process to procure the conditional green card, right? In this scenario, you're not landlocked. In the second scenario, where you want to apply and take advantage of the concurrent adjustment of status, what you do is that you apply for a request of 3 bundle of petitions, I-485, I-131, I-765. Now, in this case, you cannot travel outside United States unless you receive the approval of the travel permit I-131. That's it.
I think there were a gentleman here and then the gentleman there. Sir, 1 second. We'll give you a mic, sir. We'll give you a mic. Let's take one more question. We'll give you a mic.
Hi.
Go ahead.
We are immigration consultants based in Bangalore. We've done 5-6 PR/citizenship for Cyprus and Greece. So we've been contemplating to also help a few of our clients on EB5 visa. We haven't started consulting on that. So my question to the panel is that how many regional center entities are there currently that we can work with? And how do, as an agent who are actually speaking to the people who are applying for the the EB5 visa, how do I choose a right regional center partner when I am choosing?
Okay, well, you have so many people who, anybody wishes to take that on?
I think the process is similar to what an investor would do. So as someone who is advising your investors or your clients, the same kind of due diligence will go. I think Akshat listed down all the questions as to what kind of questions should be asked to any regional center based on the track record, the current project that they have, the timelines, the construction timelines, how are the jobs getting created. I think those are the same set of questions. There are hundreds of regional centers if you ask that question. But when it comes to the track record, the experience, I think there are few regional centers whom you can identify. Now, how many regional centers you want to work with, that's up to you. But when it comes to the due diligence, I think the due diligence is exactly the same, whether you are an investor or an advisor.
The gentleman at the
One last question.
Can somebody comment on this backlog of the, like EB5, because EB5 quota may be around 10,000 for the entire world. When the backlog is there, and after particularly when you get a conditional, like a green card, what happens, like the time getting extended, Like now, for example, several other visas are taking earlier. If they are taking 10 years, now maybe more and more and more. The same thing can happen to EB5?
Yeah, so this is a topic I'm actually intimately familiar with because I actually study these numbers a lot. As of right now, this very second today, there is no apparent backlog in EB5 under the new categories. Now, just because there is no official backlog, we do have an idea of the number of pending petitions that have already been filed. So let's just say if there is like 1,000 people in front of you, there is petition is still pending. Their petition needs to be approved. They all need to get their green cards before you get yours. So there was a little discussion earlier about set-aside visas. As of right now, we can pretty confidently say that if you're investing in a high unemployment project, and you're born in India, chances are you will get into a backlog. How long is this backlog? I don't know. If you invest in a project in a rural category, there may be a bit of a backlog, but not that much. How long is this backlog? How long can it delay the time that you actually get your green card? That's also a question I can't fully answer, but it could be a few years. I can give you historical examples. So for example, there are people who invested in EB5 from India in 2021 and 2022. Some of them have their petitions approved right now, some of them don't. Either way, looks like it's going to be a few years before they get their green cards. And that sucks, right? I mean, those people are waiting. It's a little bit unfair for them. But that's what it is. The US caps the number of green cards they give out every single year. You run the risk of a backlog. The best thing that I would advise an investor does is consult with professionals like ourselves, talk to your immigration lawyer, ask them, if I want to avoid a backlog, where should I invest my money? Should I be investing in a rural project, in a project in a high unemployment area, or a project in infrastructure area? And this can also differ based on your country of birth. I talk to investors, like I talk to Indian investors who were born in Singapore, for example, or the UAE, and many of them, the backlog won't impact them. Just remember that the government caps the number of green cards given out every single year by country of birth, not citizenship. It doesn't matter what citizenship you hold. If you were born in a certain country, they'll cap the green cards given out to them. So you could get into a backlog if you're born in India, but not get into a backlog if you're born in Bangladesh.
Okay, so I think that pretty much answers it. Like I said, the experts are going to be here as a part of this, this event, so you can reach out to them on a personal level if your question hasn't been answered. That's all the time we have. So thank you all very much for listening so patiently. And thank you very much.